Hey, welcome back to day 2 of our interview with Chris McDermott, head coach at Whittier College. Um, Today, he really talks about practice planning. He's got some great ideas in there, and I think this is really valuable for all coaches of any kind of sport. He really dives into how he practice plans, types of drills that he does, and why he does some of the things he does in order to make practice enjoyable and fun for his girls. And he talks about it boiling down to wanting to keep volleyball fun. So let's go ahead and cut over to our interview with Coach Chris from Whittier College.
For them. All right, I think we're gonna kind of shift gears a little bit and jump into how you like to run practices. We've really been curious how coaches are running practice. What drills you like to do. Kevin and I did a little bit of a debate last week about 6-on-6 versus individual drills, what we think is more important. So we'd love to get your take on maybe just first off, how do you like to start your practices?
Yeah. We always start our practices with, some sort of a dynamic or some sort of a warm up. And then stretching, kind of the girls have a little bit of time to stretch, and that's kind of their time to get whatever quick last little social aspects they need out before we kind of grind away. I'm really big. Every practice somewhat starts a little bit different, but we always start with a quote regardless. So that's something that we're really big on. Everybody jokes with me about being a big quote guy. But it's kind of fun too when our athletes will bring up a quote when there's a current situation going on, because at least I know they've been paying attention, And then one of the things too, I force our girls to, I hate to say that I force them, right? But I force our girls to discuss the quote or to talk to each other and what it means, and to give their opinion. And sometimes I might, even if I completely agree, I might play the devil's advocate just to see if they hold their ground or if they're quick and easy to change their mind because I changed their mind. And then we talk about that, So I think one of the big things that's difficult is for them to speak in front of their peers about how they feel and what's important to them. And I think if we can add a little bit of that every day into practice, then the communication aspect becomes a little bit easier from a teammate standpoint, but also they're going to take that kind of into their everyday lives and have a little bit less fear about speaking in front of people, or even with our roles and goals meetings, speaking to a, quote unquote superior or whoever that may be. So we always start with a quote. After that, it varies. I would say the first portion of my practice is typically more technical based. I'm really big on us developing our Whittier style and how we do things and why we do them a certain way, because we want everything to seem effortless and blend together and be cohesive. So we do spend quite a bit of time training, and I talk about the difference between practice and training, because I think you train movement patterns, you practice skills. And so we spend a lot of time doing some individual type work or positional work or, team concept work, whatever it may be, at the first portion of practice. And I would say the last half, we're doing a lot of team drills. It could be 6-on-6. It could be just team-oriented drills. It could be scrimmaging. It could be a number of things. It could be some competitive games. Every so often we throw in. It's kind of funny, actually. We call it our victory flag drills, and really it's because we had this flag in my old office and it was hideous, and I was going to get rid of it. And my assistant said, "Why don't you make it something that the girls can use as like a little rally monkey?" And I was like, "All right." So we created this victory flag drill, and it's become this badge of honor that if you win that hideous flag, then you get to rep it for the week until the next victory flag drill, and whoever wins that drill. And so it's just something that's set up. It could be through an entire practice. It doesn't have to be just one drill, but it could be you're keeping tallies of all these positives that you're doing throughout an entire practice, and it's a victory flag day. And little things have kind of developed over the years, So I would say that's kind of our practice structure. Obviously, maybe a little bit different for game planning if we're prior to a match versus if we have quite a bit of time, if we're in preseason versus in the heat of season. I think there's maybe a special day that we do that, again, kind of became a random tradition that didn't mean to be a tradition. My first year, I wanted to see how hard our girls wanted to work and who, I didn't have as much time to get to know them. And so we called it our cerebral practice, where we had super light and easy fun, kind of hanging out, relaxing, doing maybe a beach day. And then we had to come back and have the hardest practice of the year. And so, or we think could be the hardest practice of the year. So what we do is we have 3 different practice plans. Every drill is goal oriented. And if you fail a drill, you move on to the next tough practice plan. And whatever drill, every drill has a corresponding drill. So if you fail on the first drill, you're on the second practice plan. If you fail again, you're on the hardest practice plan. You don't get to go till you complete it. I've had years where our cerebral practice was an hour and a half. I had years where our cerebral practice was 3.5 hours. I mean, it's one of those gut check days. And I think those are important for us to have every now and then. But again, it's kind of become a badge of honor and a rite of passage for all of our girls that they talk about it quite a bit. So that's kind of how we do our practices. We like to keep it light, but fun, but competitive, but we work our tails off. So,
well, what's cool is all that stuff. I'm thinking culture and team building and it, you know, words like badge of honor or a victory flag. I mean, that I think really resonates to the athletes now, and even to the professional athletes. You know, you see them talking about those types of things. So I think that's job well done. You know, I think the great ones adapt, coach, and you're clearly adapting to the student athlete of today. I'm just curious, what got you doing the quote of the day? Was it like Jack Coberly, or because, you know, real quick, because I got to tell you something about that, but why do you do quote of the day?
Yeah, you know, I want to say it was Jack that always started off with a quote for us or a reading. You know, I'll never forget. There was one that he read us about like a frog, and so, like, sometimes it was like so unrelated. It seemed as we were sitting there listening, and then all of a sudden it would click like partway through, like, oh, that was last tournament, you know, or, oh, that was yesterday's practice. Or sometimes it was like, oh, I think that quote is me. You know, he's talking about me right now. So
I bring that up because naturally this podcast is only about a month old. So naturally we just went after all our Tigers. And sure. As you know, there's a ton of Tigers out there coaching at very different levels, and they all do quote of the day. And we all know why they do quote of the day, because Coach Joe Wortman did quote of the day. And then I know you're good friends with Coach Hendershot over at Laverne, and I know he does the quote of the day. But it doesn't surprise me that Jack Coberly instilled that in you. But then I look at it and I'm like, well, Jack and Joe were friends.
Sure.
You know, and it's just so crazy to me when you're sitting there and you're connecting the dots with coaches and how powerful coaches are and how impactful. Those little quote of the days from those, now probably these guys are in their 60s, is all the way trickling down to guys in their 30s that are coaching. And then you're doing it, and these kids that you're doing it for, they're going to do it too. And it's like, and I'm sure it stemmed for them for reasons that we don't know, you know, but.
Right. And that's what's funny. It's funny because now, like, my alumni will randomly send me this quote, you know, and like, hey, figured you might want to use this for practice. And I think that's cool. And I always make sure to use a quote that an alumni says, probably at the next practice, regardless of if it's pertinent or not, because the fact that they took time out of their day to remember something that we did, to me, is really special and important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that. So you talked about your practice planning, you went in detail about it. It was great. Sounds like at the beginning of practice, you do a lot of, you said, skill drills, you know, for lack of a better term, you're working on, you drill them. I know you have a staff. We've talked about that before. Do you give your staff member and your assistants a lot of autonomy? And do you have like 3 courts set up and you go, okay, liberos, you go work over there with this coach. I'm going to take the middles. Setters go with this coach.
Yeah, I would say
is that your style of practicing?
Yeah, every day we split quite a bit, and it may be 2 courts, it may be 3 courts. There might be a small group with me of multiple positions versus other positions with other coaches. You know, I think, I don't remember who I heard say it, but we're always kind of in that race for repetitions. You know, we want to make sure that we're getting enough repetitions at practice so that way they can make those changes, but also kind of build those muscle memory patterns. You know, one of the things that I'm fortunate about is my staff, to have such a good staff that I trust them wholeheartedly to be on a court and get everything done and know that they want what's best for the student athlete in the program just as much as I do, I think is huge. And it allows us to kind of divide our talents and conquer from all angles for our team. I'm big on reps, you know, I'm big on recreating success. And I think that if you train enough, one of the things I tell a lot of our freshmen is we're not trying to rep it to a point where you can do it right. We're trying to rep it to a point where you can't do it any other way, you know, so that way when they're out in the game, they don't think too much, they react. And now they get to think about the important things, which might be tactical or strategic or what's happening right now to see the play unfold, because they're not thinking about how to hold their feet or how to shuffle to a ball or am I making a short to long move or whatever it may be, you know? So I think it's super beneficial to have the staff that I do, because then we can make those types of practice plans where we really give them the opportunity to get a ton of touches.
I think you just gave us a quote that I'm going to use. I mean, I love that. You know, you don't do it until it's right, but you do it till you can't do it any other way. I think a lot of times coaches move on. I mean, not necessarily at the college level, but club level. I've been doing a lot of middle school level. I know I see a lot of those kids that obviously at their practices, they go until the coach thinks it's right. And then now they're in a match playing a different team, and all of a sudden it's not. And the coach looks frustrated. The kid looks upset. And it's like, well, you probably didn't do it enough. You wanted to move on to something that you thought was more fun and exciting. So
Totally.
That's awesome. I think I'll definitely quote you on that one, because I'm like Kevin. I definitely quote of the day and trying to pass it along, and hopefully more people will be using it.
Love it.
All right. Well, I mean, that's awesome. We talked about practice planning a bit last week, and you know, again, like I said, we kind of debated 6-on-6 versus individual. It sounds like you have a great mix of that. What are some of your favorite like team 6-on-6 drills to do toward the end of practice?
You know, it's funny. It's kind of sounds silly, but one of my favorite things to do with them is to make them just straight play, but do side out scoring, because it gives them such a different perspective of the game. And I mean, you guys are the same. I'm sure I started off playing side out scoring, just like I'm sure you guys did. And I think that it's funny for them to think of like how it's still 0-0 and it feels like there's so much game that's taken place, you know? And so I think that fight for earning points is something that we have a lot of fun doing. We don't always play side out rules, you know, but at least side out scoring. You know, we do a drill called You to Woman, kind of fun, just, you know, and there's so many different variations that you can do for it, but it's more about putting pressure on that one person who can score, and they're the only person that can score. Or maybe we do it that theirs is worth 2 or 3 points instead of 1, or, you know, there's a lot of different ways that we kind of do it. But, you know, we also say like, you got to give that girl her credit, you know? So if you can't turn to her and say You to Woman, then you don't get your points, you know, like, so it's just some fun things that we like to do. Now, of course, you know, you have them all right in your head when you're about to do it. And then right now I feel like I'm drawing a blank because we do so many different kind of ways of scoring. One of the games we talk about is mini games, where we do our mini games a little bit differently. We talk about getting to 8 to 13 to 18 to 21 and then 25. So sometimes we may do a straight scrimmage, but you have to win X amount of the mini games. Even if you win the whole game, if you don't win all the mini games, 3 out of the 5, then you lose. You know, and so I think there's just a lot of creativity that you can have, depending on what your goal is, but depending on kind of who you're playing and depending on what your team needs. So I think getting them and playing a ton of volleyball is super important, because I don't know if we do it enough, you know, and I think I know for me, I started learning so much more just by playing in open gyms, you know, when I was 16 even, compared to always having just the structure of practice, you know, and I think they kind of have that. It's almost like guided self-discovery for them sometimes, you know, like they get these opportunities and we put them in different scoring habits or scoring situations, and then they kind of discover what they can do. We've done some where we I'll give credit where credit's due. I think I took it from Jenny over at Emory. We talked about the 20-10 stat box, where we'll do drills where we're scrimmaging and you only stat the players from 20 on or 10 on if it's a fifth set that you're trying to simulate, to see who actually takes the big swings when the game's on the line, you know? So those are just some kind of fun things that we like to do, among plenty of others. I'm sure that, you know, I'd bore you if I just kept telling you every single drill that we like to do. But
well, one thing I think is unique about that, coach, and it's exciting, is when I'm hearing these drills, I think of when I was playing at Pacific with, you know, your buddy Jeff, who's at Laverne, and then I think about the drills that I run now for the kids at Bishops and over at Wave. And I just think in today's era, I mean, for me, I was, as you know, extreme like ADHD. Like I need a coach to mix it up
right
constantly. Like I can't do the same serve and pass repetitive. Now, most drills, believe it or not, are all the same. Like I always had a joke with people, like with the freshmen when I'd walk on the floor at Pacific and they didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I don't either. I'm just going to play volleyball and play as hard as I possibly can and try to score every point and not worry about the stats, where I think there's some truth to that. But on the coaching end, I think it's really cool when coaches do have a plethora of drills and say, we're going to work on this specific thing. And it just keeps things light, for lack of a better term, and more refreshing, so
it's funny you say the ADHD. It just immediately popped in my head, this one thing that we do. Obviously you have your bread and butter positions, you have your bread and butter swings, you have all that, right? We like to make our girls where you can only score, let's say it's a front row back row switch, I don't know, game to 10, you switch at 5 points, right? You're only allowed to score doing one thing one time. So like, let's say one of our girls hit down the line on a go ball. If she scores again on down the line on a go ball, it doesn't count. So she has to find a new way to score on a go ball, or she has to run something different. And then we do that with all these different positions. And so, we have different titles for it, but it's just funny because it almost is like the girls immediately feel like they have ADHD on trying to figure out, like, well, what are we going to do now? Did I run that? Did you set me that ball last? Can you get me a 32 now? Like just different things. And it's fun for them to now start to be a little bit accountable to the things that I think they take for granted when they just get rhythmic. And now they're having to think, and they're like, well, that's my bread and butter swing. What am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
And sorry, anyways, that was a little caveat, but go on.
No, it's cool. And one
All
thing
right.
to mention,
Big thank you again to Coach Chris. Today was great about practice planning. I mean, I think it's so important to have a great practice plan. Love hearing how he uses the quotes in order to kind of gear practice a certain way. And I just think that he's doing things the right way. And again, no matter what level you're coaching, I think this is a very valuable, 15 minutes or so on how to plan out a practice and how to make things work. So, thank you guys for listening. Tomorrow, Coach Chris goes into how he recruits. He's at a Division III school, no scholarships, and a lot of the schools in his conference are pretty similar to his. So, he tries to talk about who he looks for and how that separates him, and how does he get a girl that is also trying to go to one of the same schools in his conference. What does he do to try and separate himself? So anyways, another great talk tomorrow. Again, thanks for listening to us. Please subscribe on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on YouTube at Valuable Coaching, Instagram at Valuable Coaching, Facebook, and we look forward to hearing from you. If you got any questions, please send them our way.
If you're looking for some great clothing, new logo, you need a great combination, go to onestoneapparel.com, onestoneapparel.com. They made us this awesome logo that fit better onto great polo shirt, hoodie, and they got all kinds of different materials that you can choose from. So again, check them out, onestoneapparel.com. Email Dave at onestoneapparel.com. Let him know Valuable Coaching sent you.